welcome to a walkthrough basically of boards. So today I'm going to show you everything you need to know about boards in Jira Software Cloud. So let's start with the basics, and that is, what is a board? Because a lot of people are often confusing a board with a Jira project, because when you create a Jira project you get by default a board. But a Jira project and a Jira board are not the same. So a Jira project is basically a configuration template that tells in your Jira projects what kind of fields, what kind of issues, what workflows and so on you will have for content created within that context. A board, on the other hand, is a visualization of a filter, which means that you can have items from just one project, or you can have from multiple projects. And in your board you configure three items. You configure the roadmaps if you have that activated, you configure your backlog if you have that activated, and you configure your active sprints if you have that. And there are two types of boards that you can create, and they are the Kanban board that you use when you don't really have time periods, but you have more of a continuous delivery where you actually build things as fast as possible. And then you have the Scrum board that is designed for when you have time periods. And it doesn't really have to be sprints. You can use that one for pretty much anything where you have time-based activities, where you actually have releases on a specific cadence or time periods. So let me jump into Jira and show you what it looks like when you create a Jira project without a board. So this is my demo board, and in this one you can see that we only have up here, we only have board and we have report. So as you can see, we don't have a board set up yet. So if you don't have a board, you will automatically go into issues, because that is the default setting for a new project without a board. But let's create a board so you can see what happens once you create a board and how it looks like when you create a board. So I go to board, I click the drop list, and I click down here on create board. And I now get to get the option now to select between a Scrum board and a Kanban. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to show you what a Scrum board looks like. So let's create a Scrum board. And now I get to choose between three options. I can now create a board with a new software project, which means that I will actually create a new Jira project and connect this board to it. I can connect the board to an existing project, which is what we want to do in this case. So we're going to select that one. And what we do then is we will create a board that will be attached to this project. And the third option you can do is if you want to create a board from an existing saved filter. So if you have already saved a filter where you have sorted out all the content that you want in one or multiple Jira projects, then you can use that also as the basis. But for now, let's create it from an existing project and click Next. So first we need to set this to a name, and it's the demo project, so I just call this the demo board. And then I select what project do I want to use, and in this case I want to use the demo project. And then I say location, because a board can be connected only to one project, but you can have, like I said, you can connect this one, or you can have this containing items from multiple projects. So if I had this one for 3 projects, then I still would need to choose which project will it actually appear on when I click on the list on the sidebar on the board. So for this one I'm going to select demo project, and I'm going to click create board. And what you see now is that you will have the 3 new items. You will have roadmap, you will have backlog, and active sprints. These are the 3 items that we now can configure. And what are these things? So roadmap is an overview that is based on your epics, where you have epics as the top level, and then it will show you what stories you have beneath. The backlog, and this one looks different if you have the Kanban board, then it will just be one long list. In this case, I can now create iterations like demo sprints. Or rather, I can now create sprints or iterations that I can use to plan different activities. So in my case, I already had a sprint. On the side, we have our versions, and we also have our epics, so we can actually drag and drop between these. So for example, if I want to take this task and I want to put that into my demo epic, I can just drag and drop, place it there, and it will automatically update over here. And the same thing if I wanted to connect that to a version. And then I can have my releases here, and I can drag it to that release, and then it will be then connected to that release. And in the active sprints, in the event that I have created an active sprint, and then it will actually appear here. So in this case, my demo sprint has been activated. So you can see the date here. So those are the 3 items that you will have in a Scrum board. So let's go in and check to see how we configure these to make them work properly. So let's click on the 3 dots up at the right corner, more options, and we go into board settings. So the first area we're going to enter is the general. This is where we do the general configuration. We have the name of the board, which is what will appear up here. We can name who's owning these boards. So the administration. And if I click here, I can add more, or I can remove the current ones. You also have a location. What project have we connected this one to? And you can change that as well. And by default, when you create a board, you need to have a filter, and it will create a dummy filter for you. So you can see here, it's the filter for demo board 2. And you can see what filter shares also. So when you create a filter, you have to select who can see it. And then down here, you can see the actual query. So if we go down to edit filter query, if we want to change this, we can go to edit filter query. It will take us to the filters, to the advanced filters, and we can change this any way we want. And then we can save this, and then it will update our board as well. As you can see, this one has order by rank. So if you don't have order by rank, you will actually not be able to drag and drop and sort things in your board. So the way you fix that is you add in your query order by rank. And if you don't have that, it will actually have a function here to say, do you want to add rank? And if you click that one, it will add it automatically. And you can also see what permissions have been granted for you. So you can actually see all the project, the default software scheme in my case. So you can see if your board is being affected by one of the permissions, then you will actually be able to go here and see exactly what could be wrong. So you can change that one here. So that's the general, where you can actually configure what information you will see in your board. Second part will be columns, and this is where we actually, I'm going to close this one so we can see better. So these are your columns in your board, and by default you will have no column constraints. So what is a column constraint? Well, it is basically a way to show if you're overcommitting yourself. If you are working in Kanban, for example, it's very common that you have people that are working on a lot of tasks at the same time. So what you want to do is you want to set an issue count. How many things can you have in progress at the same time? So you can set this to issue count, and then you will have, for example, I can set this to, you can maximum have 1 item for every person in my team, or I can set this to whatever number I want. And if I exceed that one, if I set this to 1, for example, and I go to my board, and we go to the back to our active sprints. So now if I drag something in here, you will see that it will turn red, and it will alert me to say that now you are overcommitting, now you're past that limit. And if I drag something away, it will go back. So it's a visual way to show if you are working on too many things at the same time. That column restraint can come in two parts. So one is issue count, then it will count every item, or you can have issue count without subtasks. So you will have your stores and your tasks will be counted, but not your subtask below them. So you can select which one of these that makes most sense. In your columns, you can also change these columns as you want. So you can add, for example, a column, and you can name it anything you want. Apple, for example. Or let's add one I call blocked. So it's actually useful. And we can now say what type is this one. So we have our three status categories. So we have in progress, to do, or done. Blocked would be a to do. So we can add that one. And now you can see I have a new column called blocked. And the reason why we also got a new status here is because I'm using the simplified workflow. And that is because I haven't configured a specific workflow for this one, and this is what you will have as a default if you haven't committed or you haven't configured a specific workflow for it. Now my column here, I don't want to have it here, so I can drag it wherever I want. So as you can see, the columns themselves, you can drag and drop, and you can delete them as you see fit. You also see these small boxes here. And what they do is you can actually map your workflow to a separate column. So for example, if I wanted to have, I can do like this. If it isn't mapped anywhere, so you will actually have a status that when you drag it in your, or when you change it to that status and it doesn't have a representation in one of the columns, it will actually vanish from your board. So you should make sure that you don't have any unmapped statuses in your sidebar. This is also the reason why you should be careful when you do your workflows, because if you're working across multiple projects and the workflows are very different between the workflows, then it can be very tricky to actually get a reasonable amount of columns. I've seen projects where they had 24 columns just to fit the statuses. This is not the situation you want to be in. You want to have a small set of columns. So we're going to talk about that one when I do my series for the Atlassian setups for Jira. But in this area, you can create your columns and you can map your statuses. And this is what you will use then for active sprints. Swimlanes, if columns are what you have on the vertical, then swimlanes is what you have on the horizontal. So you can actually cut your columns with swimlanes. So what this does is it creates sections. Your columns will actually be divided in multiple sections, and usually it is set to none. And so if we go to the board, then you will see that we just have our columns basically. Now if I want, I can set this one to, for example, assignees. And then I can get a row for every assignee, and then it will ask where do you want to place the unassigned issues. So we can select to have them below or above. It depends on what is most useful for you. So for now we'll set it below. So if I go back to my board, you will see that my name pops up here and you'll have assigned below. And this is a very good way to, and a very quick way to change your board for your standards, for example. So if you want to have it based on epics, or if you want to have it on specific queries or none, then before you stand up you can change it to assignee, and then you will very quickly be able to see what each person is doing. And you can also find out what items do we have that no one has picked up yet, and do we need to reprioritize. So those are swim lanes. Quick filters are a way to create small links at the top of your board and your backlog, and that can quickly filter the content of your view. So you by default you have these two, recently updated, which will show you anything that has been updated in the last day. And you also have only my issues, so I can filter out to just see what I'm assigned to. So if we go back to our board, you can also actually see these up here. So if I click on this one, recently updated, you can see that these are the two items that was recently updated. And you can see only my issues. And you also see that you get a clear all, so these are also additive. So if I click only my issues and recently updated, it will only show items that fit both those. So those are quick filters, and here you can very quickly create new things. So you can have, for example, only defects, and I can then say that issue type, and you see that you get help just as you expect from other areas like filters. So I can say if issue types equals bug, and then I can add a description. I can click add. So now if I go to my board, I will have a new link at the top that says defect. And if I click on that one, it will filter so I see only the bugs. So you can use these ones, for example, in your backlog. So here you usually have quite a lot of items. So if you want, you can sort this, for example, for incidents that are of a certain priority. Then you can very quickly see if something needs your attention, and that you as a team lead or as someone who's responsible for defects, that you can bring up and reprioritize into your project. And you can use any JQL that you want here, same as you use for filters. So it's only your imagination basically that actually limits this. Code colors. This is a way to visualize certain things. So for example, you can have based on issue types. So if I, for example, want to make sure that bugs are clearly visible, I can change the color to basically anything I want. So in this case, I'm going to make it red, super red. And maybe I want tasks to be more gray. And my stories should be bluish green. And my epics should be orange. So you can see on the backlog, and I will have a little border, and in the active sprints you will also see that we have them as borders. And I can use this for different situations. So for example, I can have based on priorities, then I will actually see my priorities. I can have it for assignees if I want to make sure that everyone who is involved in the project have clearly visibility of what their actions or what their assignments are, then they can have that. And you can also base it on different types of queries that you want. So for example, you want all incidents of priority 1 should be have a red border, and you want every prioritized story about that is high, for example, then you can have a border on that one as well. So that is card colors. Let's change that back to none. Then on card layout, what this one does is that you can add more data to your backlog or to your active sprint cards. So on the top one you have for the backlog, so we can add, for example, we can add, I don't know, anything. We can have due date. Maybe due date is a good value to have. So once I add that, if I now go to my board, then we will see that in the backlog, it will now print out below. So you will actually extend the height of this one with information that you want. And the same thing if you do it on active sprint, and then we can actually have, let's take a thing we already have, labels, for example. Let's add labels and see if we have any with labels. And before I move over to show you that what that looks like, you have something called days in column. What that one will do is it will print out small dots at the bottom of your cards that will show you if it has been in that status for a very long time. Anyone who works with Kanban, this one is really good because it will actually tell you something is taking a lot longer than you expect, and it will visualize that in a pretty good way. So if we activate that one and we go back to our board again and we go to our active sprint, now you will see that we have no labels for anything. Let's add a label. So let's just go in and add a label. There we have labels. So let's just add a label and say label. There we go. And now we should see label printed out. There we go. And you also see these small dots. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have clicked on it. You also see these small dots that will show you, and if you hover over it, will show you how long it's been in that column. That's why it's a pretty good feature to have when you're working with the Kanban. Next is estimation, and depending on what kind of setup you have, you should have it either set to story points if you like to work with arbitrary numbers, or you select original time estimate if you work properly with time, or you can have task progress, which basically doesn't do anything, and the same thing with issue count. So I would always choose original time estimate because I work in a reality where time actually matters, and when I do that, I want to also activate remaining time and time spent. And what that does is you actually get 3 values instead of 1. So you will get the original time estimate and that you set, if you set that to, let's say, 100 hours. And when you work on it, when you actually log time, that will go into the field called time spent. And then it will calculate, or you will actually manually set remaining estimate. So what that does is that it will allow you to set an original estimate, and you can change that. And so if you have miscalculated, which we all do, then you can change the remaining estimate, and then you will actually log time as usual. So this is what I suggest that you put up, what you configure. But if you prefer, you can have story points. I know a lot of people like to work with that one. So this will in turn also affect many of the calculations that you have in reports. So for me, original estimate, remaining time and estimate is the perfect setup. Working days is the next one. So we can now set a region, and for me it's Europe, and I'm at, let's see, do we have, there we go, Stockholm, that's where I am. And so that is the time zone. It will actually show you then the times in the system based on your setup. And then you will also have standard working days. It is by default Monday to Friday, but not everyone works that way. So if you are, for example, working Saturdays but not Mondays, then you can set that one up. If you want, you can also set non-working days. So that's it for working days. Issue detail view. And let me collapse this one again because you have a little bit more information here. So no longer being used actually. So if you want to configure what information you have on your issues, you will actually go to the board. And you will go into one of your issues. And at the bottom you will have a configure. And from this one you will actually see all the fields that you have right now connected to this screen. And we're going to talk more about screens also in the future series, how you configure Jira and Confluence. But this one will show you what kind of fields is currently configured for your screen. And you also see what screen it is. And if you click here, then you will actually open another tab, and this is where you can actually add more fields. So you can add any field that you want, and it will show up on your screen again. So if we go back to board settings, the issue detail view isn't really anything that you will configure from this end, and so we can actually skip that one. The next part is the roadmap, and the only thing you can actually do here is activate it or deactivate it. So if you don't see your roadmap, this is where you will go, and you will click this one and turn it on. And just a notice for roadmap, you can only use the roadmap if you only have one project connected to your board. I don't know why they have chosen this setup, I can guess, but it is a serious limitation. And if you want to use your board or you want to have some form of roadmap that will actually span multiple projects, the only option you have is for now to upgrade to the premium version and get advanced roadmaps. Because if you try to add another project, your board will actually stop working. It will actually deactivate itself. It will actually only work with the items that you have in the project that the board is connected to. So just a heads up for that one. That concludes today's tutorial on how to create and configure your board. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below and I'll make additional videos to answer your questions. But for now, I hope this one was useful for you, and as always, have a great day.